Hello everyone. Today we are going to have an in-depth analysis of incredibly important but least understood concept of two-nation theory. It is one of the most conflicting and controversial theories in history of India. This topic is important for multiple subjects such as history, polity, international relations, and even for your personality test. Hence, I will attempt to put everything into correct perspective. Now, having said that, I would request you to watch this video to the end and you'll be surprised to know some extremely important facts for your examination. This theory simply says that Hindus and Muslims are so different from each other. They differ in their religious practices, cultural aspirations, social upbringing, and even in their daily life that they are not supposed to live together. And if you make them live together, then they might stay together temporarily, but in the long run, there would always be friction and fermentation. The ill feelings between these two communities will never go. The pioneer of this theory was Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. But this theory is not really that simple. First, not all people agree with this theory. This theory has too many defects of its own. And it's not really just about Hindus and Muslims. It's just about being human beings. Human nature is to cause and live in conflict. People belonging to same religion, same caste, same community have harmed each other in far worse manner than other communities would do to them. Hence, it is not just about religion. It goes way beyond that. But at this point, you must think that what could have been the reason for development of such a theory? Were there any ulterior motives? Did the British have any role to play in it? Was it a brainchild of the British? And if it was, how did they actually plan it? This is something that we have to understand. Now let me break the factors that historians consider important in the evolution of two-nation theory. The first one is revolt of 1857. You must be wondering that 1857 का क्या लेना देना है two nation theory के साथ. Apply your logic and see. The British, they took power from Muslims because India में 13th century onwards proper Islamic rule established था. Every sphere of Indian life was heavily influenced, I would say dominated by Islamic law, their traditions, even the official language was Persian. But then 1765 में Battle of Buxar end हुआ, and after this battle Mughal Empire was nothing but piece of a fiction. इस Mughal Empire को deliberately जिंदा रखा गया to create an eye wash for people to avoid mass unrest in India. The British occupied entire India bit by bit from under the nose of Mughals, Marathas, Nizam, and various Nawabs. Now, when this revolt of 1857 happened, the British suffered heavy casualties. The loss was enormous. Their foundations were shaken. Their rule was on the verge of collapse in India. So there was an investigation in the aftermath of revolt, and the British investigators discovered that this revolt was primarily caused by Muslim people, and they labeled it as Muslim conspiracy or Muhammadan conspiracy. Now, in this situation, the British had changed their outlook towards Muslims. Suddenly, the Muslims were left out, they were persecuted and harassed by the British, and suddenly the religious orthodoxy in Islam at that time also went against them. For example, Islamic law, Sharia, prevented Muslims from studying science, maths, and other subjects. They were supposed to study only Quran. But now the new rulers of India were the British, and they offered jobs to those who studied the newly introduced subjects. Now, Hindus at this point will take advantage of the situation. They will upgrade themselves through education and political participation. And Hindus were doing comparatively much better than Muslims. But again, everything has pros and cons. Now, more Hindu people were educated. They got into government jobs. They studied Western literature. They became familiar with Western political ideologies, Western ideas, and they started organizing political activities. They formed organizations, they started newspapers, and they started creating pressure in 1870s over the British. So, for the revolt of 1857, the British thought that Muslims were primarily responsible. Hence, they were retaliating against them. And for next 2 decades, the conditions of Muslims they became very bad. Earlier, the Muslims were in dominant position, but now, after this revolt, their role was suddenly reversed. They were no longer financially dominant or militarily dominant. There was a new dominant class and it comprised mostly Hindus. In 1870s, different nationalist organizations were active in India and Indian nationalists were pressurizing the British to give them considerations. Now British needed a counterpart to stop the rise of these Hindu nationalists in India. The only thing that could counter Indian nationalism at that time was Muslim nationalism. So the British not only created but also nurtured the concept of Muslim nationalism. You must be wondering what is Muslim nationalism? I'll explain it in the next slide. But at this point, the British used known Muslim figures such as Sayyid Ahmad Khan to push their own agenda. And the agenda was to create a serious gap between Hindus and Muslims. They spread the notion that Muslims are poor because Hindus have usurped their share in the administration. And if the Muslims wanted growth, they must support the British and must be anti Hindus. The British needed prominent Muslim figures to spread this propaganda, and that is how the concept of Muslim nationalism found its seeds. There was one more reason Hindu overtone of nationalism, and undoubtedly, INC was dominated by Hindu figures, not because this organization was communal, it was simply because there were not enough number of Muslim politicians. But still, INC had Muslim representation. But because majority were Hindus, the British labeled INC as a Hindu body, and this fact was misrepresented time and again to show that Muslims were unsafe in India. Their political interests will be crushed under Hindu nationalism, but it wasn't the case. It was just a propaganda. Now let's focus on this point. Two nation theory received substance in 1870s. After that, 1906 में Indian Muslim League बनेगी, and this league further widened the gap between Hindus and Muslims in India. This league clearly had a communal agenda. And finally, in 1930s, एक clear cut desire इंडियन पॉलिटिकल फ्रंट पे एग्जिस्ट करती थी जिसमें ये डिमांड किया जा रहा था दैट देयर मस्ट बी एन इंडिपेंडेंट मुस्लिम स्टेट इन इंडिया बिकॉज इस्लाम सिर्फ एक सोसाइटी ही नहीं है बल्कि वो अपने आप में एक नेशन है एंड हिंदूज एंड मुस्लिम्स दे डिफर in everything. These differences were being highlighted, of course, for the political gains by some people. Because even in 1930s, Muslim leaders were heavily outnumbered and they knew it very well that if India remained united, the majority share in power will be under Hindus. And some people were not okay with this idea. One amongst them was Muhammad Iqbal. We will talk about him in next slide. Now at that time, by majority of people, it was believed, it had become an established fact that Islam and Hinduism, they are both major religions and these religions are incompatible with each other. इन दोनों religions के बीच में कुछ भी common नहीं है and despite several attempts, they could not produce anything having common values. That's why majority of people to some extent started believing that coexistence of Hindus and Muslims would be impossible in the long run. This idea had made home in the hearts of the people and it was going to be misused by Indian Muslim League in the general elections of 1946. Now, these are the three main figures associated with two nation theory. ये हैं Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. He is known as the pioneer of this theory. He provided substance of this theory. इस theory के chief architect consider किए जाते हैं Mr. Muhammad Iqbal, and the final executioner Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He was the biggest name who pushed the agenda of two nation theory, and he demanded creation of Pakistan in 1940 through Pakistan resolution. Now let's take a quick look at some facts. Syed Ahmad Khan, of course, he is known as pioneer of the two nation theory. He is best known for Aligarh movement. Aligarh movement was a literary movement. He encouraged Muslim youth to study further, to study Western subjects, and to join the British services. In fact, he openly claimed that if you want to grow in life, leave Hindus, they are untrustworthy, and join hands with the British. He also established Anglo-Mohammedan Oriental College. It was done, I guess, in 1875. Now, Muhammad Iqbal, he is known as the chief architect of two nation theory. The important facts about him: he received title of Sir, knighthood की उपाधि मिली थी in 1922. He was a very famous poet in India, and his first book of poetry, please remember the name of this book, Asrar-e-Khudi, and he is known by two popular names. He's called Allama Iqbal. Allama and Ulema, they both have the same meaning. It means gifted or expert. And he is also known as Mufakkir-e-Pakistan, which means the thinker of Pakistan. The idea of Pakistan for the first time was proposed by Muhammad Iqbal in 1930. And of course, the third person in series is Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He was the final executioner of TNT, two nation theory. But to your surprise, he was once called ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. Actually, Jinnah initially was a member of INC. He had offer from Indian Muslim League as well when he returned from England. But he did not choose Indian Muslim League. He chose INC at that time. He even defeated Indian Muslim League candidate on behalf of INC. This title, Hindu-Muslim Unity Ambassador, this was given to him by Sarojini Naidu in 1916 during Lucknow Pact, because this pact was arranged by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He was the lead negotiator in resolving the disputes between Indian Muslim League and INC. So he wasn't communal at this point. In fact, Muhammad Iqbal was also not communal till one point. Muhammad Iqbal was not always in favor of having a separate state or country for Muslims. He even wrote very famous song Sare Jahan Se Achha Hindustan Hamara in 1904. But then in 1905 he went to England to study, and when he returned from there he also went to Germany for his doctorate degree. So after his return in 1908 he became a different person. He wasn't the same Iqbal who had left India. His ideology had completely shifted due to reasons best known to him. We really can't comment on that. He introduced the consciousness in Muslims as a nation. देखो आज की डेट में नेशन जिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में यूज किया जाता है, it is very different than its historical meaning. The word nation comes from a Latin word natio. The word natio literally meant cat's progeny, which means billi ke bacche. And this term was used by Greeks earlier to denote the outsiders. In Greece, people from outside were not welcomed, and जब भी वो लोग ग्रीस में आते थे तो उनको सेकंड क्लास या थर्ड क्लास ट्रीटमेंट मिलता था. It means the outsiders, they could not find places inside Greece to stay. तो वो बाहर के एरियाज में गैटोज बनाकर, कॉलोनीज बनाकर रहते थे, एंड वहां उनके बीच में एक बॉन्ड डेवलप हो गया. दे जॉइंड टुगेदर एज ट्राइब्स. So initially, these Greek people, they used the term natio or nation in a derogatory context, but later on, during 16th century, इंग्लैंड एंड बाकी के यूरोपियन कंट्रीज ने इस कॉन्सेप्ट को रिवाइटलाइज कर दिया, एंड दे एसोसिएटेड नेशन विद द यूनिफिकेशन एंड इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ पीपल. सो मॉडर्न कॉन्टेक्स्ट में नेशन इज ऑल अबाउट having something in common, having common history, common literary traditions, common practices. तो अगर दो कम्युनिटीज के बीच में, जो कि मेजर कम्युनिटीज हैं, अगर उनके बीच में कुछ भी कॉमन नहीं मिल रहा है, इट मीन्स दे आर नॉट अ सिंगल नेशन. दे आर डिफरेंट नेशंस, एंड डिफरेंट नेशंस हैव द नेचर of colliding with each other. So, because Hindus and Muslims were fundamentally different from each other, they formed different nations. He proposed कि एक सेपरेट इंडिपेंडेंट स्टेट होना चाहिए मुस्लिम्स के लिए, एंड उन्होंने इंडिया की मुस्लिम कम्युनिटी को इस आइडिया की तरफ अट्रैक्ट करने की शिद्दत से कोशिश की थी, एंड ही वाज रियली सक्सेसफुल टू अ लार्ज एक्सटेंट. और उनकी जो बच्ची कुची कमी थी वो बाद में मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना ने पूरी कर दी. एंड द आउटकम वी ऑल नो दैट इंडिया वाज फाइनली डिवाइडेड in 1947. We had a bloody partition in which millions of people lost their lives and their homes. It was an unprecedented holocaust in history of India. Now look at the second point. मोहम्मद इकबाल का मानना था कि इस्लाम सिर्फ एक रिलीजन नहीं है, बल्कि एक सभ्यता है. इट इज अ सिविलाइजेशन, एंड सिविलाइजेशन का प्रोटेक्शन केवल एक इस्लामिक स्टेट में हो सकता है. It will always be in a compromised condition if Islamic people are ruled by non-Islamic people. So on the basis of this logic, he suggested the idea of separate independent state for Muslims. और इसी आइडिया के बेसिस पर चौधरी रहमत अली, जो कि कैम्ब्रिज यूनिवर्सिटी के स्टूडेंट थे, he came up with an acronym पाकिस्तान. ये टर्म ये सजेस्ट करता है कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर कौन कौन से एरियाज होने चाहिए थे. इस एक्रोनियम को बनाने के लिए कुछ खास दिमाग लगाने की जरूरत नहीं थी. P स्टूड फॉर पंजाब, A स्टूड फॉर अफगान, जो पहले NWFP वाला एरिया था, नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न फ्रंटियर प्रोविंस, दैट वाज कॉल्ड अफगान एरिया. K कश्मीर, S सिंध, एंड बलूचिस्तान, उसका पीछे का तान उठाकर लगा दिया है. So this acronym was created. The name Pakistan or the term Pakistan was coined by Chaudhry Rahmat Ali, probably in 1934. But the idea of Pakistan was not created by him. It was created by Muhammad Iqbal. And finally, the idea was executed by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Guys, if you find this content helpful, please share it with your friends and colleagues who might need it. Thank you for your time.